You're listening to the Y4Life podcast with Michelle Bound, Director of Y4Life at Lutherans for Life, where we prepare youth to be gospel-motivated voices for life. Be sure to stick around after today's live recording of our Chats for Life program to find out how you can be live too on our next Youth for Life podcast. Hello and welcome to our podcast today. We're doing a special edition called our Mailbag edition. So, and we'll have 4 or 5 of these coming out this summer. So for our Mailbag, what we're doing is we're taking a look at questions that students have sent us, that youth have sent us, or that they've sent in at different events where we don't get through all the questions. So today we're gonna look at some of those questions, and I have with me 3 lovely ladies that have joined me. Of course, I'm Michelle, Director of Y4Life, and I'm just gonna have us go around, and if you want to introduce yourself, we'll start with our newest member, and then let's move to our oldest member. Not necessarily oldest, but who's been here longest. Sound good? Okay, so go ahead, Macy.
Hi, I'm Macy Frochner. I'm the Y4Life summer intern, and I'm really excited to be on.
Go ahead, Diana.
Oh, okay. Because you said not the oldest, and I am the old. Okay,
Yeah.
I was confused. My my name's Diana, and I am the media resource assistant for Y4Life.
And I'm Corey, not the oldest, but I have been with Y4Life the second longest besides Michelle, and I'm the Y4Life assistant.
Excellent. So it is very exciting today to meet together, and we're going to talk about kind of a tough topic. The next, actually, to this episode and the next episode are kind of, again, more difficult topics. They have to do with abortion, and today what we're going to focus on is really starting that conversation, how to have the conversation. What do you do when you are engaged in a situation where you've run into someone who's pro-choice, or maybe you're not sure where they stand on life issues. And so we're going to address some of those things today. So the way that we're going to do this is we're just going to share a question that maybe has been sent in, and take some time to explore some of those answers. So I want to start with this one because I think this comes up so often. And it's kind of tweaked actually a little bit now with Gen Zers, but this has come up for so many years, and it's a result of that postmodern mindset. So the question is, what would you do in a discussion where the other person will only respond, "Well, your truth is your truth, and it's not my truth"? What do you guys think? So we're engaged in a pro-life conversation. We're putting out all of these facts, right? Maybe sharing some truths. And the response is, "Well, yeah, that's your truth, but it's not mine." Your
Yeah,
thoughts?
this is really difficult to navigate, and I went to a public high school, and I really ran into this a lot when I was trying to have pro-life conversations. I think that the most useful thing is really engaging the Socratic dialogue. And when I say that, I mean thinking Socratically too, and having an open mind in the sense that you're willing to listen to what the other person is saying. Um, and and so I think you maybe start with a question like, do you think that anything is objectively true? If so, what is objectively true to you? And then, try to get to understand what their criteria for objective truth is. Because I think that everybody, whether it's conscious or subconsciously, they do think some things are objectively true. Like I think everyone agrees that racism is bad. Not everyone, but most people that you're talking to would say that racism is bad. So you can agree on that and say, what makes that objectively true? And then kind of grow from there. And then I think it is important at some point to bring in Christ, because, as Christians, we would say that's what makes things objectively true is the truth incarnate, which is Jesus and what he tells us in his word. But yeah.
Yeah, just piggybacking off that too, I think the remembering our worldview is based in the Bible and in creation and, science that we know is from God. We do have that objective truth on our side, even if they don't want to admit that. So just remembering too that our worldview is shaped by the Bible and shaped by Christ and his redeeming work in our life. And so we take that out to share with others, whereas their quote unquote truth is often shaped by subjective things that have happened. And so they're not looking to Christ for that truth, but instead they're looking around them. And so, Macy, you said it really well of finding the objective truth first. And I think again, just remembering our worldview comes from the Bible and taking it back to Christ is a really great option when you're having the discussion.
I'd also like to link back to what Macy said about the Socratic method, because we had a conversation about Josh Brom, who I believe we have a lot of his DC stuff on our YouTube page, but he also does a lot of really good work with that too, because it's some people are just harder conversations, and sometimes it's a lot harder to be gospel motivated with them when they're not being kind.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that element, right? Um and certainly we don't want to when we're engaged in conversation, we don't want to react with emotions. When we don't want to react as someone who's angry. But I guess let's back that up. When we react, certainly some emotions are appropriate, like compassion and remembering that the individual that you're speaking with, even though they might be pushing your buttons is a loved child of God. And so, so we respond to their concerns with compassion and with grace, right? But I do think it is important to get back to the let's talk about that. Okay, so if it's your truth and my truth, let's talk about what truth is. And Macy, you did start us off in the right direction there. I like to do a little exercise with the students when I teach apologetics and when I talk about or answer this question, because we can prove truth to them without even using the Bible. And you're right, the Bible is foundationally our truth. God is the God of truth. But when we're speaking to someone who is not a Christian, we probably need to start somewhere else. And so, what I like to do is, like if they have a backpack or if they have something really nice, like a nice watch, right? Or a really awesome phone or whatever. I might say, that phone right there, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to go ahead and take it because I want it. And my truth says that I can take things that other people have and they can be mine, right? Would you be okay with that? And that just kind of, again, it kind of alleviates, it takes it out of the realm of for life arguments and into something that can kind of be a little bit silly. And of course, they're not going to be okay with that. And so we would both agree then that there is a truth that when you own something and I own something, they can't be, I can't take something you own and make it mine. And so we do have a truth that we agree on. So if you can find some truths that are outside of ourselves, and maybe outside of the pro-life arena to start agreeing on and making that kind of common ground to start a conversation, then you can move into things for life. And Macy, your example of racism, I think, is an excellent one. We can
Yeah.
agree that um, that the things that are said about other people are inaccurate and unloving. We can bring up issues like slavery. We can bring up, there's so many issues that we can say, these are life issues, and we actually agree on those. And there is some truth here. So, what is the truth about life? And then you get to explore. So, excellent. That was great. Who wants to do the next question?
I would love to jump in because I think it kind of piggybacks off of that just a little bit. But how do you start a conversation with a friend who you know is pro-choice, but you don't know how?
Like you don't know how to
How
start
to
the
get start
conversation?
like the conversation. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyone want to
I
jump
think
in? Go ahead.
I think it's important to kind of put like little breadcrumbs out. Like, right? Like little breadcrumbs that kind of lead up to the conversation. That way it kind of has like a natural approach because people can be very defensive about their thoughts and opinions. Um, and my debate style is not very confrontational in that. So I would approach it with like kind of building up to it little by little. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that would give it a natural approach. And then you can share your thoughts and like the Bible verses or why you think it is with a gospel motivated voice instead of being like, hey, let's have this conversation. And it's going to be uncomfortable for both of us because I'm just bringing it up out of the blue.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is good advice to kind of to slowly build the case, maybe by commenting on other life issues, right? There's probably some life issues you can agree on right now. And for example, suicide is bad, right? Homicide is bad. Those are life issues. You know, the idea that when someone grows older that they might need care, those are things that um, we can probably agree on even before we get to that life issue. So I do like that idea and maybe dropping it into conversation. I think it's also important to know it's okay not to have a pro-life discussion every time you have a conversation with your friend who's pro-choice. Like that doesn't describe any friendship. Right? There's no friendship that every time they talk about the same issue and they try to be like-minded on the same issue. That is fodder for ending a friendship.
I think when we have conversations with pro-choice friends, having them in person is best as well. Sometimes we're prone to want to just text a quick link like, oh, check this out, and then have a discussion that way. But that doesn't really foster any relationship building. It's more of just I'm going to ambush you with a text, and now we have to talk about it. So I think that's another thing to keep in mind when you're not sure how to start a conversation, is that in person is always best, especially when it's a topic that you don't know how they're going to react. Um, so even if it's not the topic of abortion, but it's something like, oh, look at this law that got passed about women's sports. We'll use that for an example. And maybe that is a great thing, that we're keeping women's sports for women or keeping them separate. But not everyone's going to agree at this point that that is what's best. So having those conversations in person, rather than a quick text or something like that, I think is the best way to start a conversation.
Yeah, and you're right. In person is best. And I think it is okay if you're going to have a hard conversation. It's okay to like verbally say, I know this is going to be a hard conversation. I just want you to know it's a hard conversation for me to have too. Like this is hard for me to talk about because I value your friendship so much and I hope that this doesn't change that friendship. But I just want to I just want to let you know that, you know, your life is valuable and your life was valuable even from the moment that you were conceived. And I guess I'd love to see if you're willing to explore these ideas with me. Um, and I think starting that way, right? Just starting with this is hard and I value you as a friend is important. And if it's too hard for the person to talk about, then it's okay to set it aside and try again some other time. We have not been called to be um, the savior of the world. Jesus is that savior. And we are seed planters. And so just because the conversation hasn't worked out the way we hoped at this time doesn't mean that it won't later. Just because we didn't change someone's mind now doesn't mean that what we've talked about or what you've said makes no difference. It takes a lot to build a case. And I think what was I read somewhere or I heard, maybe it was Josh Brom who said this. It takes between um, five and seven experiences where you recognize where there's dissonance, right? When you recognize that what you believe actually doesn't line up with the facts or with something else that you believe. But it takes a few of those moments before someone starts changing their mind. So maybe you're number one, or maybe you're number four, or maybe you're number five, and this person is really stubborn and they need seven, right? But just because you don't see a change doesn't mean that that change won't happen in the future.
Yeah, and Michelle, what you're saying really reminded me too, about I just read an article regarding apologetics called The Rhetoric of Love. And the author differentiated between two rhetorics, the rhetoric of love and the rhetoric of dominance. And when you start off, like Corey said, in person, and you start off saying, I value you, I love you, I'm your friend, you're already coming from a place of we're equal, we're on equal footing, and we both want to have a mutually edifying conversation. But if you're coming from a place of this person is incorrect and straying, and I need to correct them, and it's on me, that's a rhetoric of dominance. And you don't want to dominate someone. That's hurtful to them. You want to uphold their life too. And like what does Paul tell us love is in 1 Corinthians 13? Love is patient, love is kind, love is not boastful. And so I think that's important to keep in mind when you find the right time to start the conversation.
Right. Next question. What do we have?
I think this kind of fits in perfectly with what we were just talking about. How can you keep the mindset of friendship versus a project or obligation when working with people? How do you avoid getting frustrated?
Yeah, that first part really does connect to what you just said before, right? With how do we, is this person someone we love and we want to help and care for, or is this a task I need to get done, right? Is it I need to change their mind and this is my number one task and I will forsake all things in order to do it. And obviously we would approach it with this is a person loved by God, a person loved by me, a person that's intended as a gift to the world. And so we're going to handle this differently than um, we would a task, right? Or just a an argument per se. We could get on stage and do some apologetics arguments back and forth and not lose any friendships. But when we're dealing with an individual who has a strong belief that is different from ours, our goal is to maintain the relationship. So we talk about at Y4Life winning the person rather than winning the argument. That's what our focus is. And when you win the person, you're able to change hearts and change minds.
On the avoiding frustration part, this is something Michelle says a lot, is it's okay to take a break. Like you can say, okay, we're getting heated, some we're just having some miscues in our conversation. Can we take a break? Let me know when it's a good time to like have this conversation again. Maybe we can meet up for coffee or, go have lunch together to continue. But it's okay to step away if you feel yourself getting frustrated or you feel your friend is getting frustrated. Because again, when you're focused on winning the argument, you're going to give into your frustrations easier, and you may say things that you regret, things that are more combative and not filled with love. So that's one that I have thought also outside of pro-life conversations is okay too. You can walk away and take a break when you're getting frustrated, because that frustration will only continue to amplify a situation instead of um, calming the situation.
So I guess the next question that I think fits in with this topic of the person, is how do you balance taking such a long time on a single person versus spending less time per person on more people using a different, more direct approach? We are tasked with spreading the gospel to the world, and there are so many who haven't had a single conversation, even a short one.
So I'm going to jump in on this one really quick because I don't think that the individual who asked this question, I don't I don't think. he or she meant it to come across maybe the way it does, at least to me. So um, here's the thing. One person is just as valuable as a whole crowd of people, right? And we don't measure the work that we do for life based on the number of people we supposedly convert or convince to believe something else. We've been called actually to many and various vocations. And one of those vocations may be to this individual who, if that person was the only person on the face of the earth, Jesus still would have come to die for him or her. And so one person is just as valuable for your time, right? It's like a mother who has one child at home is doing incredible work to uplift and uphold life. And that work is just as wonderful as someone who goes out and speaks to 5,000 people and helps them see this message, right? So I think what again, to put the best of construction on this is to recognize the vocation that God has given us and to not give up on the people that God has placed in our path. Um, I feel really passionate about that, especially because I think of my background as a teacher and the individual lives that you touch. That's just as important as my work now, where I speak to groups of 100 or more, right? And and sometimes it's even more effective one-on-one. So um, I guess I would say speak to the people God has placed in your path, uphold their lives, love the people God has placed in your path, and do not think that there is greater work to be done, because the work that's meant for you is right in front of you.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. A lot of time, maybe you're thinking of like when you're tabling on campus or talking with a group. Maybe that one person that wants to have a longer conversation is the one that's ready to hear what you have to say. And so taking the time to have the conversation is not a bad thing. I'm thinking back to, 3 years ago when we were at the youth gathering and we had a group of girls come up to talk with us, and one was very angry and was very clearly not willing to have her mind changed. So she didn't stay very long. And it was clear that we were not going to change her heart or her mind in that 3-minute conversation. But she had a friend who was ready and willing to talk and sat down and had a conversation at our booth for it was at least 30 minutes that she was there. And I think that's the other thing to remember is taking the time to have a longer conversation is probably due to the fact that that person is willing and ready to hear what you have to say about the importance of life and the gift of life that we have from God. So balancing is not always going to happen because in this world there are people who are not ready. Their hearts have not been softened. They're not open to hearing the message of life. And there are others who say, "No, this is important to me. I'm ready to hear about this. How do I get started? And what can you help me with in addressing these issues?" So
I also think we live in a world of like social media now, right? So like you have all these influencers out there and you have all these people and they are very much like sharing their thoughts, hitting big groups of people, but having actual conversations with with people and reaching their hearts one on one makes a huge difference.
Yeah, Diana, that you made me think of like how fast-paced our society is too. Like we have fast food, we're always on the move, like we always have something on the schedule, and it's so hard to think about just sitting down with a person and getting to know them and having a for life conversation with them. And yeah, it's really hard to balance, but I think Michelle, you all put it really very beautifully. Like consider your place in life according to the vocations that God has given you and move from there.
So let's go ahead then and kind of talk about we've alluded to kind of those aggressive arguments and what to do if we encounter an aggressive argument. Um, you know, Corey, you mentioned it's true. We had a group of girls come by our table, and one was very very aggressive, and the other two were not, and we're open to conversation. So what? How do you handle that aggressive argument or that aggressive discussion? Tips that you would share.
I think remaining calm, right? Like, I think it's very easy, like when you get into a big discussion, to be like, but this is right. And I think what makes Y4Life so different is that's gospel motivated. Like the gospel doesn't point a finger and say you're wrong. The gospel doesn't, like Macy said, love is patient, love is kind. Like it doesn't come out aggressively. And I think remaining calm and remaining in the mindset of I'm speaking in a gospel motivated voice helps a lot more than being in the mindset of I need to win this argument, because then
Mm.
it becomes aggressive and then people just want to win.
I think too, again, going back to taking a break, when you can feel that the discussion is getting heated and it is gearing towards an argument, it's okay to say, you know what, today I think we need to take a break. I think we've had some really good discussion, but we are both getting heated, and I don't want to damage my relationship with you. Let's take a break. Um, let's if it's someone that you know you're going to be able to encounter again, like say, hey, let's meet up for coffee in a couple days or in a week. Or if it's someone that you're not sure if you're going to see again, like you are tabling or you are at a large event, saying like, I think you have I think we both have a lot of things to think about, and how can I pray for you moving forward? Um, just those subtle reminders of like, I still care about you as a person, but I don't want this to become a hostile encounter, a hostile discussion. So, and what Diana said too about coming from the gospel and a place of love is very beautiful as well, because that is ultimately our goal, is to show the love of Christ and the gift that he has given, the gift of life.
I agree. I think there is one more element to kind of look at, and that is when we encounter someone who's angry or who is getting angry, right? Certainly we don't want to escalate that anger. And so one of, an easy way to say is, I can see that you're getting a little angry, and I'm really sorry. I didn't intend to make you angry, right? Is there anything, can you tell me why you're feeling angry? And the reason that I would ask that question is because what we found, and I think what other for life groups indicate, is that if you're encountering a woman who's filled with anger, or a young woman who's filled with anger, she often has a history with abortion. Now, that does not mean that she has had an abortion. She could have had an abortion. We know that 1 in 4 women um, will have an abortion by age 45 in America. That's a significant number. So, to our listeners, you probably have already met someone or you know someone who's had an abortion. In fact, you probably work with someone or go to church with someone, right? And maybe you just don't know that. So, there may be a history of abortion, participating in abortion, but it could be two other things as well. One, the young woman could have helped someone get an abortion, right? Could have participated by taking a friend uh, to a facility, or encouraging them to get an abortion as a solution for this unplanned pregnancy. But the final reason that I've encountered is that sometimes it's just that there's a great compassion for a woman who is afraid, right? Who is caught in a situation where she feels there is no out. And if that's the case, we can definitely say with them, I care about that woman too, and you're right. It would be very difficult to find out you were pregnant and you weren't ready for that. And I appreciate your concern and your compassion for women who find themselves in those situations. And for the woman who has had a history with abortion, whether that is having an abortion herself or supporting someone else who has an abortion, has had an abortion, I think we also have words that we can say, and that those are words of forgiveness. And so it might be helpful, if possible, to get to the root of that anger. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes they want to end the conversation. So, with the young women who came to our table at the youth gathering, I was not able to. I continued speaking to the person who was angry, right? And asked about it, and she indicated some hurt in the past, some hurt from family members, um, and physical hurt, right? And so I was able to share with her my sorrow for that, and concern, but at that point, she did choose to disengage. I had a recent experience out in Montana as well, where there was some disclosure of past hurt, and one of the things I was able to do was switch the conversation directly to, "Are you safe?" Right? Can I care for you? How can I help you? Right? So maybe the anger comes from a different source, and that source could be a different life issue. And so it's good to know that there's multiple things that might be coming in here. And so if they are willing to explore that anger with you, um, that might be a real opening to uphold their lives. All right, we have time maybe for one more question.
Okay. I
What do
really want to ask this one because I think it was one that we all kind of wanted to touch on. If you leave an argument with a friend and you know that it was their fault, should you say sorry first?
Yes, I'm glad you brought this question up, Corey, because when I read this, it made me think of Matthew 18, when Christ says, if a brother wrongs you, you go to him and reconcile. And so if we feel like we've been faulted in an argument, as Christians, we're called to, emulate Christ and his humility and to go to them and say, can we reconcile? I love you. Let's be friends, let's be family members, whatever the relationship is. And so I think that's really important. And then that also goes back to one of our early questions we talked about, where Michelle talked about valuing their life in the conversation. And I think that if you show them that humility and that your willingness that you value their friendship more than winning the argument, that'll go a long way.
And I think too, when you say sorry, it's not like, sorry, I upset you, or it's like, I'm sorry for what may have been misconstrued. I'm sorry that there has been dissension here. Like, don't apologize for speaking the truth, but apologize rather for maybe how maybe how the conversation went. Because sometimes we are not sometimes we are always fallible humans, and we do say things that maybe come across very harshly, and we don't always speak the truth in love. So rather than apologizing for your pro-life stances and what you know is the truth, apologizing for how you came across in the conversation and what may have led to that argument rather than a discussion. um, that's something I've had to work a lot on, and I know is something that, again, as broken people, can be something very difficult to address.
I'm an over apologizer. Like any woman in the little Zoom screen right now will know that I'm an over apologizer. And Michelle is actually laughing right now at this. So I would apologize, but piggybacking on what Corey said, I think I would apologize because I don't like awkwardness, right? Like I would apologize and say, like, I'm sorry. That was like a really awkward conversation and I love you. Like, can we just be friends again? Like, I don't want any awkwardness between us. And I think it's important for us to have our own thoughts and opinions. And if you want to have a conversation later about it, we can. But I would apologize just because we have talked a lot about keeping the relationship, right? Like changing someone's mind and their approach to life isn't going to happen in one conversation. And if you just leave it like that, I feel like there's a chance of not having more conversations in the future. And that's more harmful in the long run than sucking up your pride or doing what you do naturally, in my case, and apologizing.
Yes, you're right, Diana. And all three, you're absolutely right. The answer is what's the goal and what do I want from this? And that is to continue to love this person and to be loved by that person, right? And the relationship is what's important. It is not your pride. It is not whether you are right or whether you're wrong. But and it's good advice, Corey. We don't have to apologize for God's word, right? For the stances but certainly we very likely could have said something in a way that was offensive and did not even know it, right? So, yeah, it is always best to start with humility, start with the apology, and with the desire to continue the relationship. So, and you four ladies, well, three ladies, I see four people on the screen, but I'm not talking about myself. But the three of you do a wonderful job of sharing that message of yes, Diana, apologizing for even things you don't need to apologize for, but just for keeping relationships at the forefront. So, as listeners today, if you do have more questions, we'd love to field them, and certainly I would recommend any of my staff members to share their thoughts with you. So feel free to reach out. Michelle at Y4Life.org, send your questions there. We'd love to answer them this summer. But also, we hope that we can support you. So if there's a way that we can support you, please feel free to reach out. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope that you like this podcast, this episode, and share it with others. God's blessings on your week and on your work for life. Thanks for joining us for today's life topic. Check out Y4Life.org or email Michelle at Y4Life.org to find out how and when you can go live with us at our next Chats for Life session. Or join us next time, right here at Y4Life Podcasts, where youth learn how to be gospel-motivated voices for life.